3 years ago, a Reddit post titled, "I'm currently staying at a friend's house, here's why," was shared on the popular social news website. Through a series of pictures, the user showed how he and his brother discovered something truly disturbing in their own home. They had lived in the house for around a year, and had always assumed that this bookshelf was built into the wall itself. While messing around, they discovered that that was far from the case. The bookshelf concealed a secret stairwell that spiraled downwards. The stairs themselves seemed to lead directly into a wall at the bottom. Had that been the end of it, then this would have probably been a fun little discovery. But about halfway down the stairs, the two brothers found this crawl space, barely large enough for an adult to fit in. Inside, they found this. The user added the peel of a banana he was eating for scale, showing just how small this space really was. Someone had been periodically living in their walls without them realizing, coming and going when the house was empty. Due to the house's soundproofing, it's likely that the unwanted guests slept in there at night, with the family remaining completely oblivious. These objects were found amongst the blanketing. A peculiar ornamental elephant. A key, though to what the Reddit user doesn't know. And the creepiest of all, this pair of dolls. What the intruder was doing with them remains unclear. The thought of a stranger being in your house without your knowledge is a truly unsettling one. The thought that they considered it their home as well only makes it worse. The police were contacted, and thankfully for the brothers, their house has remained intruder-free ever since. At least as far as they know. Not so much a single post for this one, but rather an entire subreddit. Internet forums are great places to meet like-minded people who want to share their knowledge and ideas regarding a certain subject. Reddit's Carl H. Programming, set up by tech whiz Carl Herald, was a community of computer science enthusiasts. Users would post about programming problems they were having, or engage in discussions about the topic, and Carl would respond with his insights. He was an extremely active and engaged moderator, who many in the community considered a friend. He would regularly Skype with members of the subreddit to teach them programming and coding, and even set up a YouTube channel to reach a wider audience and help others with their tech-related problems. His tutorials are still available to watch. Not only being a mentor to others, he also helped users who reached out to him with personal problems, offering his support during moments of depression. He was generous with his time, an amazing motivational teacher, friendly and welcoming. But for all of his qualities, Carl harbored a dark secret. In 2013, Carl was arrested for raping and torturing his 9-year-old son alongside his partner. The 33-year-old had been filming and taking pictures of the child performing sexual acts and distributed them online. His son was abused to such an extent that he ended up being admitted to a psychiatric ward after Carl's arrest. The news quickly spread to Reddit, where members of Carl H. Programming were left in disbelief, shocked that a guy who they interacted with and considered a friend could have done such a thing. In November 2014, while awaiting trial for his crime, Carl was found dead in his county jail cell. He had committed suicide by hanging himself. These days, it's a very strange subreddit to visit. There are, of course, those who are thrilled about Carl's death, since what he did was so horrible. But amongst them are confused users, who both condemn and thank Carl at the same time. He helped change the lives of many people in a positive way, but that doesn't excuse his heinous actions. The subreddit's become somewhat of a relic, since nobody leaves posts there anymore, and reading through the past conversations between Carl and the other users, which all ended so abruptly, really makes it feel like a virtual ghost town. In a post that was made over 4 years ago, one Reddit user asked the question, "Have you ever felt a deep, personal connection to a person you met in a dream, only to wake up feeling terrible because you realized they never existed?" One user shared an experience of their own that stood out amongst all of the other responses. He recounts how back in college, he was knocked over by a football player after a confrontation. It of course pissed him off, but he got up and went on with his day. He goes on to describe his whole life from there. He gets a great job, falls in love with a girl and gets married, and the two of them have children. Then, one day, he notices something off about his lamp. "One day, while sitting on the couch, I noticed that the perspective of the lamp was odd, like inverted. It was still in 3D, but just wrong. I was transfixed. I stayed up all night staring at it." He ends up staring at the lamp for days on end, becoming obsessed with it, putting a strain on his relationship with his wife. She takes the children to her parents' place, and the OP stays home, fixated on the lamp. Eventually, he has an epiphany. The lamp wasn't real. And then he woke up, in the arms of a police officer, rushing him to hospital after being knocked unconscious by the football player. What he thought had been his life from that point onwards had only been an extremely realistic hallucination after he was injured, and what he perceived as years had only been a matter of minutes. This might sound outlandish, but similar experiences have happened to people who've had near-death experiences, or even bad trips on magic mushrooms, where they live out their entire lives, only to wake up at the end of it and find it was all a hallucination. Not much scientific research has gone into this dream-life phenomenon, and those who've looked into the matter haven't come to a consensus, but some believe they're the result of large amounts of DMT being released into the brain after a person's body is put under a huge amount of stress. When this happens, a few minutes in reality can actually feel like 10, 20, 50, even 80 years. This experience caused the user to fall into a deep depression, and it's easy to see why. Perhaps the creepiest part is that the guy still catches the occasional glimpse of his son in his peripheral vision. He's perpetually 5 years old, and he can never hear what he says. When you really think about this, it's truly horrifying. Waking up in a moment you thought happened years ago, only to find everything and everyone you thought you knew and loved never really existed. It's quite a lengthy post, but you can find it, along with all of the others, down in the description below. Those of you who've watched my folklore upload might remember the Whistler video, but for everyone else, here's the backstory. Less than a year ago, a Reddit user made a post about a man who had been following him from a young age, appearing at different times throughout his life, ominously whistling at him in a particular way. One high note, and then one low. He was never able to catch a glimpse of the figure himself, but when the whistling first began, he remembers his mother's concerned, slightly terrified expression, as if she knew who was making the noise. This captured the curiosity of many Redditors, with some drawing parallels with the legend of El Silbón, an emaciated figure who stalks and eventually kills people, particularly men. Its presence is marked by an eerie, continuous whistle, and the further away it sounds, the closer to you he is. The story itself is very weird, but would perhaps have been a lost post, if not for what happened next. Time went by, and the OP moved to South Dakota with his girlfriend. On July 4th, 2015, the two of them decided to watch the Independence Day fireworks at a quiet spot on the bank of the Missouri River. As the fireworks were going off, OP's girlfriend went to get more beers from the vehicle, leaving him completely alone in this secluded area. During this vulnerable moment, a figure in a canoe slowly paddled towards him down the river. This seemed strange, since the police had herded all of the boats off the river. And then, of course, the whistling started. It was the exact same whistling he remembered from his childhood, identical in pitch and tone. When the canoe was perpendicular to the shore from the OP, the figure in it turned, looked right at him, and whistled before paddling off into the distance. Being a videographer, the OP was able to capture some of the footage as the figure in the canoe was almost out of sight. Here's a portion of the video. It's hard to see at first, but in this shot you can just about make out the figure in the canoe. When he showed his mother the video, he asked her about the first time they both heard the whistling together, and why she reacted the way she did. His mother said that she had no memory of the whistling ever happening. There are yet to be any further updates about the whistler. Whoever or whatever he is, he's been tracking the OP for the majority of his life, across several states. If you'd like to hear the full story or see the full video, you can check it out by following the link on the screen now. In a thread made 2 years ago, the hikers and backpackers of Reddit were asked to share the creepiest things they'd come across while exploring the great outdoors. One post stood out as being particularly disturbing. It reads as follows. My two friends and I were hiking in a pretty popular spot in our area. It's a 150-foot waterfall that takes about 45 minutes of uphill hiking to get to. We decided to go bouldering around the bottom of the waterfall. This bouldering trail isn't on the main trail, and not many hikers ever veer off the main trail. They took some pictures along the way. This was one of them. Do you see her? She's hard to see at first, but by chance, the group had inadvertently taken a picture of a 22-year-old girl, face down in the mud. She had severely injured herself after falling from the waterfall above. Both of her legs had compound fractures, leaving her unable to move, and she'd been out there in that condition for about 20 hours. She had no cell phone, no water, no food, and nothing to keep her warm. The girl had been out hiking with a friend the night before when they both fell. Her friend initially survived the fall and went off to get help, but didn't make it more than 100 yards before she collapsed and died. Nobody knew they were there in that secluded spot, and had the group of hikers not noticed the girl below them, she almost certainly would have died too. As one Reddit commenter stated, "Can you just imagine if they hadn't found the girl? Days or months later, they're sitting at their computer, looking at these photos from their hiking trip, just to finally notice what's in the background. That's just crazy. "5 months ago, Reddit user Night of Sunlight found a strange-looking object at a construction site and asked other users if they could help him identify it. A few people replied with their suggestions, but things really started to gain traction when one user said that it looked like a landmine. They weren't alone in their thinking, and many others soon started to confirm that this was indeed an Italian VS-50, a powerful anti-personnel blast mine. Warnings started flooding the thread, but Night of Sunlight had stopped replying, even before the first suggestion that this could be a landmine was posted. This seemed strange, since a quick glance at his profile confirmed that he was a rather active user and posted frequently. This was the last thing that Night of Sunlight posted. If you've seen the movie Men in Black, it reminds me of that container they were using to carry around those diamonds. This has led many to believe that he tried to open the mine up, and accidentally detonated the device in the process. Reddit loves a mystery, and users began to play detective in hopes of finding out what happened. No articles about a landmine explosion could be found from around the date when the post was made, and since the image was stripped of any data location, nobody knew where to look for clues. After going through his account history, users discovered that Night of Sunlight had been planning a trip to Ecuador, a country with a history of using VS-50 landmines. It seems likely that that's where he discovered the mine. Redditors searched for an Ecuadorian article about an explosion at a construction site, but their search turned up nothing. Perhaps it was detonated in a secluded area. 5 months later, Night of Sunlight's account remains inactive. For those of you who aren't familiar with the confession bear meme, it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. A picture of a bear with a confession that you want to get off your chest, usually something funny or trivial. 3 years ago, a post was made on the Animal Advice subreddit, simply titled, "Finally have the guts to say it." This was the confession. "My sister had an abusive methodic boyfriend. I killed him with his own drugs while he was unconscious, and they ruled it as an overdose." Since the meme was usually reserved for light-hearted confessions, Reddit users started to question the original poster, Naruto, asking him whether he really had committed murder. The post started to blow up, leading Naruto to claim that only some of it was true. I posted this wondering what would happen. There is some truth behind it, but I'm not saying what was true and what wasn't. This, of course, divided opinion. Some claim that it sounded like a plotline in Dexter. Others even said that they hoped it was true, and that the boyfriend got what was coming to him. When pressured even further, Naruto said that it was all a joke, and quickly deleted his Reddit account and the original post. This just made people even more suspicious, and certain Redditors decided to take action. Naruto was doxxed, and his personal information was made public, including his full name, his age, address, occupation and employer, and links to all of his social media accounts. Using this information, Naruto was swiftly reported to the FBI's tip website, and the San Diego Police Department began an investigation. That's as far as anyone currently knows for sure, since there's nothing online that suggests he was actually arrested. But whether his post was real or just a joke that backfired, it goes to show that what you decide to post online can have major consequences. Hi guys, Lazy here, and thank you very much for listening. In a way, I guess this is sort of the spiritual successor to that 4chan video I made a while ago now. I've left links down in the description below to all of the posts that I talked about in this video, so make sure to check them out if you feel so inclined. And hey, while you're down there, why not do some naughty things with that like button? I'm pretty sure it would appreciate it. I'm actually going on holiday to Spain for a week now, but I'll be back with another video for you guys as soon as I can. So until then, stay spooky, and remember, the best things happen in the dark.